Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today we're joined by two guests who you actually saw on stream recently from the Last War Survival live stream. We've got Nephisto and Rollincoal. They're alliance mates. They had a crazy SvS, and you saw that brutal battle. Gentlemen, welcome to the video.
Hi, Thank you.
Great to have you guys on. I know my audience will be very familiar with Nephisto, the Kraken across many games, the most recent of which is Last War Survival. But Roland, people are probably meeting you and hearing your voice for the first time. So before we get into this interview, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, is this your first city building war game, Last War Survival?
Yeah, this is actually the first city building game I've made it past any beginning stages. I tried out Whiteout Survival or Whiteout a slight bit, and I just never even got to the city building part, honestly. This is my first account that I've even had on Last War, and enjoyed it very much so far.
And so, trial by fire, obviously, you and Nephisto end up in the same server. It's a total coincidence that that was the case. I believe you guys started out as adversaries, became allies, and just fought like crazy in this last SvS. Does that kind of sum it up?
Yeah, that's definitely how it started out. So, in the beginning, obviously not knowing anything about the game, my very first encounter with Nephisto was seeing the arena unlock, and he was immediately at the top. And I was like, well, who's that person? And not really knowing anything about it, I finally got into an alliance and started to, move up. And still, he didn't talk in the beginning, so didn't know anything about him. And then the chaos began. He was in an alliance, and the war broke out within the server.
So you had a war with each other before ultimately everybody kind of came together for SvS. And like, what's the timeline that this all went down before SvS? Like, how long in Last War do you sort of prep for your first SvS? What's that timeline from I got started to we're matching up against somebody else?
Look.
I think it's,
yeah. Sorry, I'm actually trying to find out the correct answer for that. But so the beginning phases, you do the initial verses within your own server. So before all that happened, Nephisto was trying to find the alliance that he was going to stay with, which ended up resulting in a few alliances being completely ashed, and many players leaving the server. So the very first verses that we had was between FAFO and MGMG, and Nephisto was in MGMG. And believe it or not, we actually beat him on all the event except for the very first day, until we got to Buster Day, which was the very last day where we fought each other. And that was chaos. And essentially, the fighting never ended. It's supposed to be a 24-hour event. Yes, you can fight at any time within the server, but most people stop within the 24 hours, and that fighting just never ended. So, looking at the timeline, the very first server versus server happens after about the 30-day mark. So, it was just after 30 days into the server, and it was just complete chaos. Everybody was constantly having to shield up or fear of attack, and that was what was driving myself and Bink to just build to beat Nephisto.
Okay, so
But we didn't realize how far behind we were at the time, and how far we were going to fall behind while we were trying to build.
Yeah, it's hard to outpower Nephisto in a power race. I think
Right.
he's proven that time and time again. So just for context, Nephisto, to help people understand, I'd be curious to know, and I bet they'd be curious to know, How much have you spent in this game, and how much have you spent on mobile games since you started playing this style of game?
Well, on this one, it's a complicated answer, but to simplify it, it's probably around 600. And
That's not $600. That's $600,000 on this account.
Yeah, no, not on this account. I have two. I have two whales. One
okay.
in 1130 and one in 1240, and the one in 1240 is gonna be much bigger than the 1130. So the one you watch is not gonna be as strong as the other one. The other one's gonna, when it gets to this part of the fighting, it's gonna own. It doesn't have as many enemies because it's not as controversial. I don't have energy or stamina to be controversial in two accounts at the same time.
Okay, that makes sense. So 600, and then just in general, how much have you spent on mobile games?
Like 4 or 5.
4 or 5 million.
You can put the zeros. I think you like to put the zeros.
Okay. Yeah, he says, I've spent 4 or 5 million.
Yeah,
in mobile games.
Particularly in Call of Dragons. I don't know if you followed up the account to the end, but in that account, I was ahead of the second player by 900 million when I quit on the second whale in power. So there I was untouchable basically in power, and Rise of Kingdoms I got to like 1.2, and then if you add basically all the deaths that I had, probably, I don't know. In Age of Empires I also built up very quickly, and I built up a couple accounts. In Call of Dragons, the reason I spent probably the most is because I sponsored 26 T5s.
Okay.
Very quickly.
When you say you sponsored 26 T5s, you mean that like you basically paid for them to get to T5?
Yeah. My whole team all my pilots from Rock basically were rewarded with T5 accounts and COD, but at the beginning, like they were T5 just as fast as I was.
Okay. Bring your own army, as it were.
Oh yeah. And we did, and trust me, it was interesting. It was interesting. Yeah, we did pretty good.
Wow. Well, I can't. I am a little bit in sticker shock, and I appreciate your sharing that. I feel like if people didn't know, like that gives some context into Nephisto's mobile gaming spending. GG. With that said, you start to make your way toward SvS. You guys make amends, and you're going into this first SvS, which we streamed, right? Like, what was the ally situation there? Because it seemed like you guys were pretty much alone. I mean, when I looked around the map, I might have found like 2 cities from allies porting in to help. So I knew you were kind of outnumbered, but it looked pretty rough out there.
So that was actually many SVSs in. We've had quite a few before that point. Very first SVSs were a little different. We weren't really super allies at that point. The things kind of started to grow as we progressed, and he saw that we were willing to fight beside them and work with him. And I mean, the merger of Alliance to where we are with Nephisto only happened a few weeks ago, honestly. But we were already working pretty well together before then. It was just, hey, there are certain things that we can't do by being in separate alliances, so we have to be together.
Okay, got it. So those competitive events leading up to what we spectated is what ultimately drove everyone to kind of get together due to the sort of design of those events. Okay, I got it now. Which brings us to the ally situation, man. Was it just one server that you were allied with versus all the others?
So there were 2 servers. Yeah, there were 2 servers that showed up as allies, but only in limited numbers. I mean, there's only a few players that were even relevant to the fight, honestly. We had Zeus show up from 11:30, 11:25.
25.
Yeah, and then we had what was the other one from 11:31?
Yeah, damn souls. Yeah.
Yeah, that was basically one player and a few extras from 1131. But it was pretty stretched thin. And the thing is, there were just so many others that we were up against. The numbers were definitely not in our favor.
The funny thing is that our main two enemies were basically two servers we beat to get to the finals. Basically, one was very angry, particularly because they did not expect to lose. And I think the second one, his name is Josh Choppa. He lost, but he kind of was good friends with Roland and Binks. But what triggered him to basically go to the other side was that he messaged me after we beat him, and he was like, "Hey, I got this site where you can get 25% discount on bricks, and I can share it to you, and I'll get a commission, and that way you help me and I help you." And I was like, absolutely not. And I took it to another level, and I exposed him, right? And I exposed the whole thing behind what happens through these third-party sites, which is basically either somebody is willingly letting these sites use their credit cards and then doing chargebacks, or they're actually stealing credit cards, right, in mass piles, and basically using the credit cards without authorization. These people realize it down the road, and basically these people then have to go through the whole process of recovering their money. So I exposed that because, for once, my grandmother at some point was a victim of this. So to me, this had basically, it was a trigger point for me. But yeah, so when we got to the finals, he was very, very determined to basically be an annoyance or interfere. And the other one was from 1127, right? Chubbs, who basically just has it out for me. You know, in these games, either people love me or they hate me. They usually tend to hate me very quickly. And then it's a love-hate relationship in some way, because they wouldn't be, I guess, entertained without me, the antagonism that I represent. And at the same time, they message us and they talk to us in private, and they want to be our friends. You can tell that Josh is looking for an angle to he wants me to sponsor him now, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, are you insane? We're burning your server. The first site we can, we're going to burn your server.
So this gives the color I think I was looking for to like how you ended up in this situation of being versus so many, and also so many motivated enemies. And to touch on that third-party site thing, I feel like almost every time I hear about a third-party site, it's pretty much a scam where there's a chargeback involved, to your point, where they say, yes, give us the money and we'll load up your account, don't worry. And then a couple months down the road, after you've done it a whole bunch, they charge it all back and you get wrecked. And I was talking to someone recently who got wrecked like that. So I generally am also extremely wary of any third-party site. So, okay, we understand now the ally situation, why you were up against such difficult odds and such motivated opponents. Let's talk about the fight itself, right? So when this thing opens up, we could see the leaderboard. We could see that there were 4 turrets and a center objective to hold. When you hold the center, you're racking up score. And when you hold the turrets, you're either doing damage to the center if you don't own the center, or you capture faster if you do own the center, which we only figured out that it worked that way like halfway through the event, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Just, you were like 25% late. Otherwise, that fight would have lasted an hour. Because had I known that, we would have dragged that fight for an hour longer. I figured out that 25% into the cap, and then I switched basically my strategy. And that's something, by the way, that we're really thankful for, because on the server before, on the fight, it took so long, and it was because I was not holding we were not holding a single cannon. I was just holding capital. I was just rotating formations, and I was like, this is taking like 3 hours. But it was because we were not holding cannons. So once we figured that out in the last fight that you witnessed, I did change strategies. Roland adjusted too. We were more focused on getting cannons as we were holding center. We were less focused on just holding the center for a longer period of time. And that gave us, I think, the ability to hurt more troops faster. And I don't know if you noticed, if you're looking at the kill count particularly, there's a point after like 20%, if people want to go back to your other video and watch it again. But if you go to that video, you're going to realize that once we switched strategy, we were killing at 3 points. We were killing at cannons. I was particularly killing at 3 points, 2 cannons and the capital. And the kill count started to rack up, started going up like thunder. And I could see like numbers every time a troop would reinforce or capture a target, it would go straight up like to 40, 50. Capital formation was hitting 100, 120. And I know that for a fact that in the capital, I'm getting hit by the massive whales, right? On the turrets, maybe 2 or 3 whales are hitting me, but on the capital, I see when the big whales are rallying or hitting me, progress in a sequence, right? I see that my main formation is not something easy to kill, not even for the big spenders and the big whales and other servers. But when I started doing the cannons, I saw a lot of pressure released from the capital, and we were balancing out. There were periods that we were lagging a lot, and then periods we were not lagging a lot in points, but they were running out of troops at the end. We just didn't adjust the strategy fast enough. I don't even know if we would have won, even if we had done that from the beginning, right?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, on the topic of running out of stuff, like I don't really have the context here, but I'm really curious for people that, play the game. I'm sure they want to hear this, that like, how many resources, like days or years of speed ups, troops did you blast through? Like what did you guys work through in that like 2 to 3 hour stretch?
So for myself, I burnt through a pile of resources, to say the least. I actually had to go and purchase more resources in the middle of the match because I was winning.
No.
Yeah. I mean, for players that do play this game and know about gems, I spent almost 500,000 gems in the match, which essentially a $100 pack gets you 10,000 gems. So do the math.
Okay. Jeez.
I mean, you can math that out.
Yeah, that's some commitment right there. All right.
And so it's very hard whenever you're a small group fighting an entire server, for sure, plus more servers. Because
Yeah.
I was on the right side for a large portion of the battle, and I definitely had multiple players from multiple servers trying to stop me essentially from being able to do anything. Because not being as big as Nephisto, it doesn't take much to keep me from having to keep my main squads back to defend myself. Whereas he can send more of his out to do things and take cannons and this capital and whatnot.
So then in terms of KP, like what did you guys gain? The number seemed really big when I was watching.
I almost doubled, actually. I was right around 7,000 beforehand, and I have not done anything since that fight, and I am currently at 12.3 million. So I was right at just shy of 7 million, or right around 7 million, and I'm now at 12 million.
Yep. And Nephisto, you gained like 7 million or more?
So he got more like 9 million or 10 million.
Jeez. Dude,
So
that's
you actually
insane.
had a screenshot of him from before the battle.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Yeah, he was like 20 million before. Yeah.
in my case,
You're back. You're back.
yeah, this
And
is funny, but in my case, this was disappointing to my enemies. But you know how much I used in gems? Roland's gonna get angry about this one.
You didn't use near
I,
as much as me. I know you didn't.
I didn't use, I don't think, even 25,000, and the reason is because I didn't even go through my healing speeds. Um, my account is very efficient, so I could have run that war for 4 or 5 days and not even be dented. As crazy as that might
Jeez.
sound.
You know, it's funny, like
But that's
when
the
you
difference in power.
yeah, when you have a big account like that, like the goal is to just be slamming enemies like as frequently as you possibly can at like every opportunity, do damage, you know? Because eventually they run out and your enemy can't keep up. I'm in a similar sort of situation in Rise of Kingdoms and other games I've played where like a small number of players that have extremely high power values, like the more they leverage that power to drain everybody else, the better. Because like yes, they're losing power, but like compared to how much their enemies feel it, it's fractional, right? So like the more you can hit, just the more chaos and damage you can do. So then,
Yeah, but in this game, right? Let me tell you something. You know how in COD, Rise of Kingdoms, it's all about like there's a power you can really reach. You can't really, everybody can match your gear, your heroes to a certain
Right.
point without spending that much. So it becomes now about how many troops you have and longevity and how you can either fight endlessly or not. Here, the troop amount is limited, right? So you have to actually, I got like 50 something thousand troops, right? But to kill those 50,000 troops, you gotta be literally like going through hell to kill them. And even if you do that, I can heal them very quickly. And there's no limit to healing, so
Yeah.
I can literally. It's like I'm a billion power account
Your limit is
versus
your
like,
money.
yeah. And the funny thing is that as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really matter how many times they smack at me. The kill ratio, right? The normal player cannot even kill a unit of mine. They can't kill a single unit.
Yeah.
There were reports where I think like 30 people hit me and they didn't kill like even 20 troops.
Jeez.
So, and they're losing like 5,000 troops, 2,000 troops, 3,000 troops, depending on rallies or not. So that's why the kill count got to like 373,000 or something like that.
So, okay. This insane battle happens. The costs were, depending on your account, either somewhere between 25,000 to 500,000 gems. And ultimately, your enemies win. It happens. I've been on the losing side of more than my fair share of KVKs in certain games. So what happens next? Is there like a migration or a recovery time? When is your next SvS? I'm kind of curious for like what happens next, because I don't think you guys are in the full end game yet, right?
No, I mean there's a long time before any end game because the game is stretched out to where we're still in preseason. We haven't even hit season 1 yet. Then
This
there's
is all
season 1.
preseason.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. And then there's
Okay.
season 1, season 2, season 3, and then I'm sure they will continue to expand beyond that. Because that's just the early servers are into season 3, but we're just not there. And I mean, there's a timeline laid out. So each season, I'm looking right now, is about 60 days.
Okay.
I mean,
So,
yeah, 60 days per season.
okay. So you've got some time before you get to the end game. You recover for your next fight. Tough to take an L, but also, I mean, you did win the pre-battle battle, like to be invading them at all, right?
Correct,
Like,
which was actually very tough. They had us on many of the aspects. I know you showed it in the other stream, but quite a few of the aspects they had us on, as far as like trucks and certain other things, but we did manage to edge them out in the end. So we
right.
got the invasion rights, which
You,
was an advantage to us overall, despite the fact that we didn't have as many people show up, just
yeah,
because it gave us an out from the fight
got it.
because we
They,
weren't in our server fighting.
right. They couldn't go to your server. Like you could go to
Right.
theirs, but
Correct.
they couldn't come to
We could get
you.
out and recover and then get back into the fight, which like Nephisto never did. But for somebody like me, I had to.
Yeah, yeah. Get to the cover of Home Kingdom, heal up a bit,
Correct.
get back
Exactly.
in. Okay.
And
Got
actually, that worked out in my favor because at one point my entire device crashed and shut down. I was
Ooh.
out for 5 minutes.
Oof.
So I had to, and at first I thought it had died. It actually didn't die. Apparently, it had overheated. And
In my case,
Overheated. GG. You
in
gotta
my
play on
case, it was
PC, bro.
in my case. I just kept attacking people. I didn't leave. I didn't leave the server. As soon as
right,
we lost, they were picking up crystals, and I was just ashing everything that was left there. And again, if I can attack
Yeah.
people, right? So people are like, "Oh, you're a bad loser," and I was like, "No, listen. If the game allows you to bring people from other servers, that's fine. That's part of the rules. So if the game allows me to attack you while you're picking up the crystals, then that's part of the rules, right? If not, so
I mean, Age of
so yeah,
Empires Mobile is the same way, where like there's an invasion time window where you can be in the other server doing whatever you want, and only a small portion of that is the main fight itself. So, like,
and
yeah,
so in this case, the server's unlocked for 24 hours.
right. And
So
that's what you earned is the right
well after the
to
fight.
fight those guys. And, you know, of course they're not happy about it, and that's very understandable. And also that is a part of the invasion right and why it's so important to win those earlier stages. GG.
Right, and we've definitely been there where we have won and had other players attacking afterwards, and like I've had to go and defend smaller players, trying to get
Right.
axed by other players. So we've all been there. It's
Yeah.
just part of the game at some point.
Yeah.
I
My
mean, some people agree
mentality.
with it, some people disagree with it, but
Yeah. I mean, my mentality is basically if your server is getting invaded, that server is shut down. it's closed for business for like 24 hours. Like if you plan to leave your city, it's because you're fighting. That should be the mentality.
in the end, if you're going to try and mine diamonds, wait the 15 minutes for your war fever to drop off, shield up, and mine diamonds.
Mine diamonds from the safety of a shield. Yeah, that
Correct.
makes sense. So, any other thoughts or things you want to share as we kind of wrap up this interview? We got to know you a little bit, Roland. Talk about this fight. Talk a little bit about third-party services and kind of what happens next. But any other like thoughts or things you want to share with folks?
I think we're just looking forward to getting into season 1.
Yeah, season 1's gonna be fun. See, we haven't been there, but what we do know is that in season 1, it's basically like SvS, but I think everybody gets thrown into a bigger map. I think you can attack like 2 days a week instead of 1, but we get 10 servers. So we will remember everybody and anybody who was there at that fight, fighting for, staring. There were people that actually went there to stare that said they were with us and they weren't. So I didn't have a pen and paper to write down, but I do like to see a lot of red in my map. And this is honestly the part where it becomes fun, right? I mean, the fight was fun as hell. We lost, and that's fine. And a lot of people were like expecting us to win. I didn't expect us to win, to be honest, at any point. I knew that we were going to have like 6 or 7 servers against us, but what I do expect in season 1 is to uh, burn a lot of people, and I think a lot of people are going to quit very soon.
Oh, jeez.
We will have a drastic population reduction.
GG.
Thanos event, level event.
I mean, and the answer is just shield up and you don't have to worry about it, right? Like it's not very complicated. So I will say this, right? Like there were a few people that were commenting like, oh, these guys must have been so mad that they lost, blah, blah, blah. But you know, I was in voice with you guys. So I like, even though I was muted up, not talking to you all, except to like point one or two things out. You know, you guys were generally kind of having fun. You were at times focused on what you had to do to win, but like you were having a pretty good time. So
I personally felt like we did pretty good considering the odds. I mean, 69% drawn out over 2.5 hours. That's pretty decent, I feel like. Especially if you looked at the map. I mean, just watching your video over again gives an overall perspective because it doesn't feel the same when you're in the middle of the fight versus going back and watching your video.
Yeah, because I'm just kicking back and just, you know, you're probably zoomed in to like where you're doing stuff and what you need to do next.
No, I didn't see any of the overall.
Yeah,
I was exactly where I was, focused on exactly what was happening.
Meanwhile, I'm kicking back and I'm like, all right, here's the big picture. What's going on?
Right. Yeah. It is funny because I'm watching your stream and you're like looking for somebody. I'm like, oh, there they are over there. Hey, they're right there in this corner over here. But, you know.
No, bro, that's called being stream blind. As soon as you become a streamer, you literally can't see what's right in front of your face.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, just one more thing. If you get the scoreboard, and I don't know if you're going to post it for everybody to view, but if you actually
I can put it in
scoreboard
there.
Up, I would be very scared to be one of them. I would be very scared because basically 7 of us did more than, I don't know how many people showed up, but it was definitely more than 300 people. So,
yeah, I mean, I think if you guys can start to bring more of your alliance up to the level of power where they're able to actively contribute to these battles, it's going to be really spicy, which maybe we'll have a chance to spectate in the future. But gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to do this follow-up interview. It's a pretty cool series. If you happen to be watching this video but missed the other ones, I'll have cards in the end screen. You can go check those out. The gameplay that's been on screen pretty much the entire time here has been the early part of Last War survival. So if you want to check it out, that's what the gameplay does in fact look like. I really appreciate you guys hopping on. I think that's it, right? Any last words, gentlemen?
No, just thank you for your time again. And we'll see you next time. And I wish the best to my enemies.
Yeah, I appreciate the interview. Thank you so much.
Cool, guys. Yeah, it's been fun. Check out the cards in the end screen. You can watch the battle live or the pre-game leading up to it. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.